One of the most heartening images today on social media was many people sharing images of their daughters, celebrating them, reminding us the world is always a better place when it is made better for women. Today is National Girl Child Day. In the last few years, we have seen the government take many steps to improve the lives of young girls. Latest NFHS data shows our education and basic health indicators have improved significantly. More girls are in schools and colleges than they ever were, and more births happen in hospitals now, making it better for both mothers and children. Access to sanitary napkins, reproductive health has also improved, but there's so much one can do to improve financial, sexual and personal autonomy that still elude a large section of women. Today, with the help of experts, we will look at the march of the girl child for a life of equal nutrition, opportunities, education, employment and of course, personal freedoms of mobility, choices of marriage and motherhood. How far have we come to show our girls they are second to none? How much have we succeeded? And what more can we do? To discuss this, we have Mitali Nikore, Chief Economist and founder of Nikore Associates. We have Prabir Jha, who's the founder and CEO of Prabir Jha People Advisors, and Dr. Poonam Muttreja, who's the Executive Director of the Population Foundation of India. Thank you all of you for joining us on this discussion. Starting with you, Ms. Nikore, in the last few years, we've seen many steps being taken in the sectors of education and, of course, protection of girls and health and nutrition. For instance, there is a legislation in place for enrollment in schools. We have maternity leave ensuring, and there's also, legislation to ensure there's protection against sexual harassment at workplace. But we also have political parties having women-specific manifestos. Now we see DBT as a game changer. But what are the areas you think we did well, and where do you think we need to put in more work?
Thanks a lot. First of all, a very happy International Day of the Girl Child to you and your family and, to everyone over at NDTV. So thank you so much. And, to start with, I would say that there are three areas in which the data shows that we have done splendidly well. The first I want to highlight is education. And, of course, we all talk about primary education, and we know that India's gender parity index on primary education has exceeded 1, which means that there are more girl children enrolling in primary school than boys. But what I want to point out is from World Bank data, you actually find very interestingly that the tertiary education, has also, the gender parity index has also exceeded 1. And today, more girls are enrolling in universities, in colleges than boys, as per this data. Now, this is a huge achievement because for many decades, this was much less than 1, much less than parity. The second area in which I feel like we have done very well is, of course, menstrual hygiene education. So if you look at the NFHS data, which we were talking about, there are many indicators that have improved. But one which really stands out is that now today, 78% of girls are saying that they are using modern menstrual hygiene methods, for menstrual hygiene management. And that is a huge improvement because it's not just about those 4 days, right? It's about health, etc. across. And the third is in terms of aspirations. Today, young girls don't just want to get married. There are many girls who are saying we want to work, we want to have careers, and there is marriage, yes, absolutely, but after the age of 21 or 22. So these three are big achievements because as a society, we are able to shape the aspirations.
Right.
But of course, in terms of, what we need to do more, there's infrastructure issues, there's, education, there's skill training. We can, of course, talk about it more, but there are definitely barriers and occupational segregation where we can do more.
Right. Dr. Muttreja, let me bring you here. How do you see the progress made in the fields of nutrition and reproductive autonomy? Because in the last few months, we've also seen minors, young women seeking abortion, but coming under the crossfire of courts and doctors. Even in today's papers, we saw this Delhi High Court case. For years, we've believed that India has had better abortion laws than the West. And, you also saw the gestational limit being increased. How does one address the challenge that women still have to go through doctors and lawyers to go through an abortion?
So you're absolutely right. And we should be very proud of the fact that India has very liberal abortion laws compared to much of the world, especially if we compare ourselves to America. I mean, the feminists there, the women's group, the women are fighting a losing battle. In India, since 1971, we've had the MTP Act, which is the abortion law, and it was in fact revised recently in 21. But access to abortion is still a huge problem, especially for young girls. And as you said, they're caught between the doctors and the courts. Abortion is a right in India, but we put all kinds of restrictions because of social norms. It's not the law that is the problem. The problem is the social norms around girl child. For instance, young girls, if you speak to the frontline health workers in the community, they will never agree to an abortion or rarely agree to an abortion for a young girl. So we have to change our mindset. We have to change social norms, especially of the caregiver. The caregiver and the doctor, the medical community is not just a technical service that they're going. They have to be more compassionate. If a girl is raped or if a young girl doesn't know she's got pregnant and she crosses 30 weeks, we know that technology has advanced so much, or she crosses 24 weeks, we can do an abortion. So we have to think of the girl child. If we only think of the fetus, which I'm not saying we shouldn't, but an unwanted child should never be there. And for a child to have a child because she is sexually exploited, raped, and so on, I think we need to be more compassionate. I don't know where we've got lost. And even the law used to be much better, but recent judgments actually do not leave much to desire.
Right.
Second, I want to comment on your question on nutrition. In spite of a lot of efforts by the government, we have the ICDS program, we have the Poshan Abhiyan, and it is really unfortunate that malnutrition has increased in the last NFHS, and it is much more for girls than the boys. Anemia. Many more girls compared to boys are anemic. Again.
Right. I think we lost the connection to Dr. Muttreja. We will get back to her. Mr. Jha, there is an interesting aspect about employment that numbers show. If you look at the State of Working India report 2023, older and less educated women are exiting the workforce, and younger and educated women, of course, are entering the workforce. But 2 decades ago, 33% of working age rural women were in paid employment. But this number has gone down. But of course, the numbers have risen in rural India. How do you ensure that every working woman gets counted? How does one address this problem?
So one is, of course, we have to kind of continually track what we think is employment. I think the definition of employment needs to undergo a change, especially since a lot of people across genders, but particularly women, are also self-employed. And you must take that in the ambit. Rural India has always been a bit of a challenge because the segment is not as organized. We are getting better, though, in tracking it. But I think, more than approaches of trying to track, etc., my personal view is we must focus on greater awareness. And we have made progress, don't get me wrong. But I think that while we talk about higher education and stuff like that, I think a greater conversation, greater, popularizing of the theme around vocational education will make even the girl child, as she kind of grows, into a more employable and talent-ready asset.
Right.
And ultimately, a lot of things which gets tracked or do not get tracked is finally about economics. Right. Is your earning wage or is your earning capacity? So if we are able to look at the new India, and I'm not saying rural India will continue to lag, but I think the opportunities are increasing and multiplying of newer kinds.
Right.
And we are able to actually start looking at vocationalizing
right.
far more seriously than higher education.
Right.
And that's been my view for a long time. I think it will help the cause of the girl child even better, because when people have something which is, employment ready, makes them employment ready, the organizations, right. the employers, potential employers,
right.
then the tracking mechanism will get stronger. Otherwise, right. There's just no point. We've got the literacy level improved, but just literacy today doesn't matter. And just being a graduate for the sake of graduation is meaningless.
Yes.
So for me, the big focus is build employable, women. I think that is going to do a huge change right. to societal thinking, to a
Right.
sense of dignity, self-empowerment, and a lot about the distinguished panel they were making in their opening remarks.
So there's a spin-off to this question also. Let me get both Dr. Muttreja and Mitali on this. Mitali, answer, I mean, like, one of the findings of the ESSER survey was this lack of aspiration in children when they were asked what they want to become. Many of them did not really have that kind of answers. Many of them gave very generic answers, and there was no preparation. So we're talking about the age group till about 14. And if you look at girls, and the findings say that many girls actually self-censor when it comes to the use of mobile phones. How does one prepare girls, especially on having a life that is centered around choices, giving them a voice? And how do we have an enabling environment where girls, not just from privileged urban backgrounds, but also from rural average households, can, in some ways dream and think that they can achieve what they're dreaming?
Absolutely. And in fact, most of the panelists have hit the nail on the head. This point about creating girls who are employable, I actually have a little bit of a different spin on it. I feel like we need to create workplaces which are ready to employ women. See, today what is happening? There is a huge gap in the unpaid care work that men and women are doing. Women are doing 5.6 hours of unpaid care work every day. Men are doing 30 minutes. So that's an 8x gap, one of the highest in the G20 countries. So until we start bridging these kind of gaps, we cannot expect girls, to put in the time at home as well as in the workplace. This is one of the major reasons for women dropping out, especially post-marriage and childcare. Right. So this is how we need to create workplaces that are ready to employ women rather than women who are ready to be employed.
Right.
The second issue that's happening is on occupational segregation. Now, what is happening when we are looking at the skill training data? 90% of girls who are enrolling in skill training are going for two specific occupations. They are going for beauty salons and they are going for textile sector. Now, these are very highly traditional sectors, very women-oriented sectors. But why am I not seeing enough women going into logistics sector, into energy sector, into transport sector? These are growing infrastructure sectors where, the job growth is much higher than the overall average in the economy.
Right.
So we need to motivate girls to go into these sectors. And the third, as you mentioned, on the self-censoring and the gender digital divide. Right? The fact that why is a girl's phone being checked, but a boy's phone is not checked?
Right.
This is where we have to create a lot of social, programming and a lot of community management and a lot of, awareness at the community level that it's okay for women to use mobile phones and especially for girls to use mobile phones because the gender digital divide is much worse amongst girls. And also this means that we need to create safe spaces, not only physically, but also digitally. You need safe cities where women can commute safely, where girls can commute safely, but also you need safe digital spaces where women are not attacked and harassed online.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Nikore. Thank you, Dr. Muttreja. And thank you, Mr. Jha, for joining us on this discussion.